Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Mediocre Broker, a show where we talk about how to not be mediocre and how you can be an excellent agent. I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Crawford, and today we're going to dive into how to handle multiple offer situations. Before we get started, though, if you guys are watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube Live, we would ask you to just share it. And I want to ask a quick question to get going, too, and that's, do you guys find that you enjoy being in multiple offer situations or no? Drop a yes or no in the comment line. Matt, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely, yeah. So are multiple offers always good? That's the $1 million question. So for sellers, most sellers will say, yeah, I want multiple offers because it's going to obviously bring in more higher offers. Ideally, is what you want as a seller. And then if you talk to a buyer's agent or a buyer, they're going to say, no, we don't want multiple offers. So from our experience, I would say that when you have a multiple offer situation for a seller, it generally turns out well for a seller and generally turns out poorly for a buyer if they're not willing to go up to that higher price point. But Aaron and I are going to talk about some of the pitfalls and some of the mediocre brokers and how they handle multiple offer situations, so that way you can make sure you're not a mediocre broker. So, Aaron, what's the first one you want to start off with?
Yeah, I think it's important. There's really four major options that you can do whenever you get presented with multiple offers on the seller side. One, obviously, you're going to be able to just accept whatever the best offer is, and advise your client to do that. Second thing is, you're going to be able to respond and let them know that you're all the buyers or all the buyers' agents that you're going to invite a highest and best situation with a certain deadline. The third option is going to be that you can just counter one offer and put those others to the side. And the last option is going to be that you can actually just counter and then just reject all the other offers. So when we're presented with those four options, a mediocre broker, at least what I've seen is, they're just going to look at what is the highest purchase price, and they might look at what closing costs are if they're asking for any closing costs. What have you seen mediocre brokers do, besides those two things?
Yeah, I feel like what most of the time happens is a mediocre broker will get several offers and they'll look at the purchase price and the closing costs, and then they'll just say, well, let's just do a highest and best with everybody. So what you're assuming there is that every offer that comes in at the same purchase price and the same closing costs is the same, and that's just not true. It could be a situation where one lender that a buyer's working with is better than the other lender. From a company standpoint, it could be that the individual person that works for the company or the brokerage, mortgage brokerage, is better and just knows their stuff a lot better than the other lender that works for the same brokerage.
Yep.
There's all kinds of different issues that can come up on the lending side. It could also be what type of financing they're doing. So those are things that have to be taken into consideration. So I'm always hesitant to agree with the multiple offer strategy with you just asking for highest and best unless you really truly, as a broker for your seller, representing your seller, vetted out each one of those offers and understood whether they are pretty much the same thing. Now, obviously, you have to do what your seller wants to do. So you can't just choose what to do. You've got to run it by your seller. But us as real estate brokerages and realtors, we need to do a great job educating our sellers of what the best option is. And there's lazy agents that just want to say, well, let's just do a highest and best and call it a day. And we've all seen those deals blow up in their face. So yeah, I would say that would definitely be one mediocre broker move for sure.
Yeah, and I think also, a very mediocre move is, you obviously, as an agent, you have to have the permission of your seller or your client to be able to disclose those multiple offers. Obviously, it's in our listing contracts, and a lot of times that's marked off, and that should be something that's being asked in the listing presentation. But if that right isn't given by the seller, we have no business disclosing multiple offers. So making sure that's taken care of so that we can actually, open up if we do decide to go into, or not us, but the seller decides to go into a highest and best situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and back on the highest and best situation, I've seen it happen several times where the seller says, let's just do a highest and best, or the broker decides to do a highest and best based off of what the seller is saying they want to do. And both people end up backing out and not coming in at all. They let their offers expire and they move on, because there's a lot of buyers out there that just don't want to get into a multiple offer situation. And I kind of understand that in a lot of ways. Now, I will say there's not a lot of houses out there right now, so you have a little bit better chance as a seller for them not to all back out, but it is a possibility. So I would say that if you're going to be an excellent agent, you want to look at each offer that comes in and look at the person's financing, look how solid they are. Obviously, if it's a cash deal versus financing, that's going to be a better option most of the times. I don't see a whole lot of times that wouldn't be. If you can think of some times, definitely comment below. I'd love to hear your examples. I would say that how much money the person's putting down is another really big factor if they're getting financed, and also obviously we've already talked about what mortgage company they're going through, but what type of financing, whether it's going to be conventional or FHA. There's a lot of agents that I talk to that are not educated on the fact that if you do an FHA appraisal and it comes in low, that FHA appraisal sticks with the property for, I believe, 6 months, unless the law's changed. So, obviously if somebody's coming in with the same offer that's conventional versus FHA, and they're both coming in higher than the asking price, you would most likely want to go with the conventional financing, because it's not going, if it does come in with a lower appraisal and that buyer doesn't want to come up with that extra cash, then you can obviously have a little bit more wiggle room, because there's no appraisal that sticks with it for 6 months. And then I think that's a good time to bring up, these over asked for prices in multiple offer situations, Aaron.
Yeah, and I think kind of when you get into those overpriced, where it actually goes over list price, being educated, and I want to switch into, we've talked a lot about, how to represent your seller as a seller side, and I kind of want to jump into the buyer side. But before we do that real quick, I want to just ask, in the past 3 months, I'm curious to hear from each of you guys, how many multiple offer situations have you guys been in? I know we're in a super low inventory market right now, a ton of buyers out there looking, so it's inevitable that we're all going to be in those situations. So I'm just curious, just drop the number in the link or in the chat, how many you actually had in the past 3 months. Curious to see how many you guys have had. So jumping into the buyer side, Matt, you were kind of talking about, when we actually get that overpriced or over the list price offers. As a buyer's agent, I think it's so important to, have the awareness that sometimes these houses are being underpriced in order to create that bidding war between all the buyers that are out there. And as a smart agent, as an excellent agent, not being a mediocre broker, understanding that it's underpriced, and that even if you go over list price, that it's still going to be a fair market value house. Now, that's not always the situation. Sometimes they're priced at fair market value and they go even higher. But then there's always the appraisal that comes in. That's a whole nother issue. But that's definitely, having the awareness and the intelligence of what's going on in your local market and what's a fair market value for that house.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a great example of as far as buyers, representing a buyer. There's some buyers agents out there that I've heard that have actually coached their buyers into coming up higher, above and beyond the asking price, just to win the bid, knowing full well that it's not going to appraise. And the sellers that allow people to do that, you've got to really think you've got to be super strategic with that, because from a buyer's perspective, if it does appraise, you're paying that price,
right,
which is, that's a gamble. And from the seller's perspective, if you go with that higher offer that it's probably not going to appraise, but just because it's higher, you want to accept it, you run the risk of losing the other buyers and getting a lower appraisal that's going to stick with the property. And Aaron, I mean, your wife is an appraiser, your business partner / wife is an appraiser as well with Greenwood Homes Realty. I mean, you've seen how many times agents have tried to overprice listings or bid up the listings, thinking that it's going to appraise, but it doesn't. And you can see the devastating effects of that from a seller's perspective and a buyer's perspective.
Absolutely, because then you got to go into a whole nother situation. Negotiation: is the seller going to come down? Is the buyer going to pay it out of pocket? Are they going to meet in the middle? It's really a situation that no one wants to be in. I know as an agent, you hate when you see an appraisal come in low, but a house is only worth what a house is worth and what a buyer's willing to pay for it. So kind of jumping into some other tips also, as far as if you're going to be representing, the buyer side, and you're going in and you have the knowledge now that, it's been disclosed to you that there are other offers coming in, what are some other tips as a buyer's agent you would give the other agents out there?
Yeah, as a buyer's agent, I would say, first and foremost, make sure that you call the seller's agent or listing agent, if you will. Call the listing agent and tell them you're putting in an offer. I can't tell you how many times I get offers from buyer's agents that I've never talked to. And, they end up coming in with this offer, and then I call them and say, hey, we just got another offer as well. And they're like, oh, well, let me try to see what my buyer can do and see if we can finagle the price any higher. So there's so many agents out there that just willy-nilly put in offers for their buyers and don't call a listing agent to tell them, hey, I'm going to be sending an offer. Are there offers already? You can save yourself so much time and energy. You can save your buyers the roller coaster ride of emotions that they're going to be on when that happens. It just helps everybody for sure. Communication is definitely key in pretty much everything we do as real estate companies and agents. So I would say that's probably my number one tip. The number two tip is fully understand, obviously the seller has to give the listing agent permission to disclose anything about the other offers. It's obviously, buyer's agents are going to try to find out what the other price of the offers are, but legally they're not allowed to give that information out. Unfortunately, it does happen. To my knowledge, it happened several times without the seller knowing the listing agent was telling us the price. But a mediocre broker is obviously going to tell the buyer's agent what the seller is willing to accept and all those things and what the other offers are without getting the seller's permission. So don't do that. That's definitely a major mediocre broker mistake. But yeah, my tip would be to understand what the other offers are as far as financing wise, if they'll share that with you. If the seller gives, the listing agent permission, like I said, they most likely aren't going to give you the list price, the purchase price. But understanding what the different factors are, whether it's cash, whether it's financing, and if they're putting a bunch of money down, if they're not putting much money down, trying to finagle some of those things, and then also just coming in. I would say my third tip is coming in with accurate comps. So definitely educate your buyer what the value of the properties are going for around there, as far as price per square foot, etc. And make sure that your buyer is not making a dumb move, because yes, there's low inventory, but there's always going to be another house. And at worst case scenario, you can build a house. So that'd be my three top tips, I would say.
Yeah, and I got, there's two really that stick out to me. The first one's pretty obvious. I think most agents know, and it's going to be the closing costs. With so many FHA deals going on right now, closing costs is something that's so common that we're seeing across so many purchase agreements. So it's pretty obvious that, if you reduce or get rid of those closing costs completely, the seller's probably going to be more willing to accept your offer. The second one I think that probably a lot of agents don't think about is actually extending the time of possession after closing. With being in a low inventory market and sellers needing more time to be able to find houses sometimes, because not everything always lines up perfect to where, they're going to close back to back and have the house that they're selling, the house that they're buying back to back. So sometimes as a buyer, if depending on their situation, if they can allow that seller to have, whether it's an extra 3 days or 5 days, or maybe if it's even a week of extra possession, I think that's really something that a lot of agents probably overlook.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great tip. That's definitely an excellent agent move for sure. Well, I think it's also time to bring up the sponsor of the show, which is, drum roll, Indianapolis Homes Realty and Greenwood Homes Realty. So we don't have a large budget, so please share. We're trying to educate agents, one agent at a time, one view at a time, trying to help agents grow and not be a mediocre broker. With that, do you have anything else to conclude, or are we ready to wrap up?
I think it's ready to wrap up.
All right. Well, to conclude the show, we'll just kind of go over the main points. Mediocre brokers are going to just get offers and request the highest and best without really understanding the offers. So don't do that. Don't be a mediocre broker. And mediocre brokers are going to just let their buyers run into a situation without really fully understanding it and educating their buyers. So don't be a mediocre broker. Really fully understand the property and if it's worth coming in above asking price in multiple offer situations. So with that, please share it, share us, and like our pages, comment, anything you can do to help us grow. We'd love to have you. If you want to be on the show, you can also email us or send us a Facebook message, and we'll definitely look at you and see if it's worth having you on the show.
That's it.
That's it.